Hey guys, my name is Rai. Today I wanted to walk you through how I did my plus 19 workshop on my Master of Harmony Brewmaster monk. I haven't done this video yet on Brew, and I thought it was kind of interesting because I think there are a lot of pulls in here that you might suffer with without doing with Silent Sigil or without Solar Beam from a Boomkin. In this video I'm going to be showing you with a melee composition how to handle the first pull all in one, how to do some of the more difficult skips, where I messed up, and how to do the most damage possible. In this dungeon particularly, I'm going to be showing you how to do the drill skip even though I mess it up, how to pull and CC all of the gunks at once, and as well what I do for the rest of the dungeon. In this first gather, I'm going to be using my weapons border pretty early here to kind of get thread on everything. You're going to be seen on the very first 3-pack of mobs as I pause here. I'm going to be making sure I hit blackout kick on them. I'm going to be keg smashing the right back, keg smashing the backpack, and keg smashing the left back. Once these are all together, you're going to see that I do drop my exploding keg early for threats and then start ramping my weapons of order. 1 keg smash, 2 keg smash, and 3. I blackout kick, I put my statue down, I fire breath, and immediately I have that exploding keg out. Each of us are assigned to 1 kick in this pull, and now I'm in my Celestial Brew for my Aspect of Harmony window, and now I'm just doing as much damage as I can. Keeping that keg smash on CD, blackout kick, Tiger's Palm, or that Breath of Fire. I am using 1 Breath of Fire with that Tiger's Palm combo for the extra 5% DR, and every time my Aspect of Harmony fades from my targets, I'm reapplying Celestial Brew for that added vitality damage. As you can see here, I'm doing close to 10 million DPS, and I'm actually gapping the Outlaw Rogue here. This is a pretty fun pull on Brew if you can get it down, and I have no issues with threat. I think the trick is to this pull specifically is making sure that you have a little bit of threat on everything and going back and gathering it together. I'm going to walk through the pull one more time just so you guys understand it, and I'll do it a little bit in slow motion and communicate. But as I go in here, I'm immediately rolling off the edge here to get a little bit of momentum. Again, blackout kick in this first pack as I want those keg smashes to generate thread in the other packs so that they don't run at my healer or any ranged DPS I have. I'm going over to the right and immediately tagging any mob in this pack with keg smash for a little bit of initial threat. Again, pausing, I'm going to hit that weapons of order for the keg smash reset. Even though I'm landing a little bit early, I think that this is more important to get the keg smash out. Keg smash again. Keg smash again. And now I have initial threat on every mob in here and can immediately use my exploding keg for all that snap threat once it's gathered. Again, this pack can get together really easily on Brew if you do it in this order of operations, and immediately once everything's stacked together too, you can immediately just throw out that cheat burst for a ton of initial damage. If I wanted to min-max a little bit more, I could have waited till my 4th stack of that Weapons of Order to hit my chi burst, and as well it would have done an extra 8% damage, but I'm not too concerned, as my prerogative here is making sure I generate as much threat as possible in this pull. I am making sure I alternate things like my Fort Brew, my Dampen Harm, and as well leg sweeping to cover any of our missed kicks. But again, as you can see, I end up beating our Outlaw Rogue in this pull and doing quite a bit of damage. I think I could probably do upwards of 12 million if I played it perfectly, but again, this was a one-shot key. I didn't want to optimize this a little bit too much, and I didn't want to spend time in here learning, so this was our first attempt at the Keystone, and we did knock it out of the park. On this boss, there's not really too much to know. As a tank, all I'm trying to do is make sure that I am in the movement and position to make sure that I get the stun off on each platinum plating. Periodically throughout the encounter, as the platinum pummeler reaches 100 energy, he's going to be casting that platinum plating, which is going to reduce his damage by 30% and increase his damage done. I want to make sure I get that off immediately, as it's going to enable my DPS to be in a position where they can keep hitting the boss and don't have to move, and as well, it's going to negate any tank busters. On this encounter, my priority and my single target rotation mostly revolves around blackout kick into Tiger's Palm. You could do quite a bit of damage on Brewmaster, and there's a really nice trade-off in the way that this is currently designed, where if you're just spamming that blackout kick into TP, you're going to do a ton of damage through the talent you have called Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike is a node available on the right-hand side of your tree, which makes it so every time you hit Tiger's Palm, you have a chance of increasing the damage of it by 200%, and as well having a chance to reduce the cooldown of your remaining brews by a set amount. As you can see here, I'm abusing Speed Taunt a lot on this boss to make sure that I move the boss as quickly as possible. I think a trick that I see not a lot of Brewmasters do is using the Speed Taunt to get bosses back in position or mobs quickly centered back around the group. A really good example of this is in the floodgate on the demolition duo, where you can utilize that speed taunt provoke to quickly get Bront back into position, and you're going to see it here quite a bit as I try to move the platinum pummeler back into our group. Otherwise, this boss isn't too difficult. I don't think you need actually any button on any single one of these tank busters. I did want to outline really quickly though, kind of the solution to Brewmaster tank busters, as my #1 coaching feedback has been like, hey Rai, like, I watched a video, I really want to play Brew, I think it's really interesting, I think it's kind of complex. How do I deal with living some of these more difficult tank busters on Brewmaster? My direct answer is you don't really need to do anything other than follow a very simple order of operation. Before every tank buster, you want to remain topped, so using something like Expel Harm to top yourself, and if you need to, following up with a Vivify or a Health Bot, or using that Celestial Brew. So Celestial Brew can work kind of two ways. If you're dealing with multiple instances of damage over the next couple seconds, you can use Celestial Brew after a tank buster to help you mitigate potentially the resulting melees or incoming damage after that Purify, or you can use it before. Kind of the idea is making sure that if you're hitting Celestial Brew, you want to use it in tandem with Purify Brew stacks, which are obtained from hitting that Purify. So you don't want to just be slamming Celestial Brew without these, as they are going to increase drastically the amount of your Celestial Brew that it absorbs. Another thing too is you want to be using your Black Ox Brew a lot when you're sitting on 2 charges of Celestial Brew. Remember, as Master of Harmony, now your Celestial Brew does activate that aspect of Harmony, which is going to increase your damage done significantly over 8 seconds. It's going to take all the vitality you've stored and convert it into a dot over time. You want to make sure that you're not wasting Black Ox Brews, especially on single target bosses, as uptime on that vitality or that aspect of Harmony is going to be a lot of single target damage. Again, you can see that this isn't too complicated though. Anytime I'm taking the tank buster, I immediately hit Purify into Expel Harm and I'm topped. Usually I find right now on Brewmaster I don't need a lot of support from my healer, but every single time I take a tank buster, I follow 3 things. 1, I top myself. 2, I know that if I'm not topped, I need to hit something like Dampen Harm or Fort Brew or Diffuse Magic, and then 3, I immediately hit Purify. If you do that every single time, it's very, very hard to die to tank buster and Brew. And now I'm going to show you how we ended up skipping the drill and messing up the skip. I did instruct my warrior here that he was going to go take the drill over to the left, use Die by the Sword, and I was going to go down and start the encounter. However, he said he was very slow, and just in that same global, I hit him with a Tiger's Lust, and he manages to get in combat at the exact same time I hit Tiger's Lust on him. So this actually got me in combat, which means that now we're going to be fighting double drill, and I'm going to show you how I dealt with it. So I go ahead here, and first I need to tag the old drill, which does suck here, and then we're going to go get the second drill, which our warriors hit in. We do commit a battle res on him, and now I have to figure out how I'm going to live against double drill on my Brewmaster. Immediately now, all I know is I need 2 things going. 1, for any single time I take one of these drill debuffs, which is the bleed, I want a defensive active. You can see right now I have Fortify and Brew to deal with that first puncture, and I'm going to be using things like Celestial Brew, Dampen Harm, and as well I'm going to be using Diffuse Magic on the AoE to help mitigate some of the Mega Drill damage. The scary part of these encounters on Brewmaster is if these corrosive gunks go off, I'm going to deal with a pretty nasty absorb in tandem with this puncture tank buster. I do end up committing Dwarf there on that puncture, and now on the next one I'm going to be committing Dampen Harm. I do hit that Diffuse Magic, as you can see there, which is going to help me reduce the Mega Drill damage of this part of the encounter, and it's going to help stabilize me for dealing with this puncture. I do hit the puncture natty, and now all I have to do is hit Dampen on this last one, and make sure I can stabilize myself a little bit. As this last corrosive gunk goes out, and I'm, struggling a little bit here to survive, I have a little bit of firepower left with that Dampen if I need to get through it, and I end up just hitting that Celestial Brew and living just fine. I think Brewmaster, again, like dealing with those kind of tank busters is amazing, as you kind of have something to be able to deal with everything. Because we ended up fighting the second drill, I end up slowing this build down quite a bit and just taking my time as we're in no rush. I'm not changing the amount of pulls in this dungeon even after the drill, so I did just add 1 extra by, messing that up with that Vitality pull, or sorry, that Tiger's Lust pull. And now all we're doing on these gunks is just stopping them wherever I can. Anytime that the gunks go off, I'm immediately hitting Expel Harm to remove sort of that healing absorb, and I'm back to just following my single tiger rotation. In AoE, I am just spamming Tiger's Palm when I can, as soon as I have my Breath of Fire debuff off, because it's going to reduce the cooldown on my brews. This is particularly impactful for Master of Harmony, as brew CDR is very, very, very important for your Celestial Brew. Remember, more Celestial Brews available, more damage, more vitality spend, etc., and it's going to help you a lot in single target and AoE. I am also running 1 point in Anvil and Stave, as I've noticed a pretty significant difference and increase in my Brew CDR by just running 1 talent point in here as opposed to 2 talent points in Stagger. High Tolerance is a great talent point node, but I am running just 1 point in there now, as I find that High Tolerance only gets to a point where, unless it's actually going to save me, it doesn't really feel like it's that impactful compared to how much Brew CDR I get on my Celestial Brew. As you can see here, I'm about to cap and spend that Celestial Brew just to get out that vitality on these dogs. I'm doing quite a bit of damage overall at this point. I'm doing 3.3 million overall before the boss because I had a really good first pull, and here like I'm doing okay damage as well. Again, nothing too special about the dog packs, but I am going to show you my trick on Kujo of how to maximize your uptime and your damage. I think Kujo can actually take a lot of time, and you know, every little bit of damage does matter, including tank damage. So as you're going to get in here, I'm going to be showing you that on Brewmaster you can eat every single AoE and never ever actually have to hide unless you have no buttons or no purifies. It can get a little bit scary and you do need to manage your brews a little bit, but otherwise it should be pretty straightforward and it should be pretty easy for you to master. Again, you're watching these dog packs as soon as my Aspect of Harmony falls to my target, which is that green debuff above my enemies here, as you can see 6, 5, 4. I am just reapplying Celestial Brew and spending that vitality. I think that's, you know, overall, if I'm just sitting on Celestial Brews, it's a complete waste of time, especially when I have Black Ox Brew. There's no need for you ever to cap on Celestial Brew, especially if the packs aren't dangerous. I'd say if you're struggling to live and you need the Celestial Brew for tank busters, definitely do that first, but make sure that you're never capping on Celestial Brew, as you're going to have like a big waste of resource and time. Especially too, as you're purifying quite frequently, you're going to get tons of those Purify Brew stacks, which is going to increase the value of your next Celestial Brew. I do Purify after the tank buster, and now I'm going to show you that on the Venting Flames buff, I'm just going to simply sit out and eat this. I hit Diffuse Magic, I hit that Blackout or a Black Ox Brew, and immediately I go into a double Purify. This does stabilize me a little bit here, and I do that Celestial Brew to refresh the Aspect of Harmony debuff on Kujo. Now that I'm in weapons order, I am stacking up that weapons as quickly as possible, hitting that Chi Burst, and as well getting those Blackout combos out with Tiger's Palm. Again, on this next AoE, I'm going to be soaking the Venting Flames, but this time I don't have Diffuse Magic. I am going to be hitting Fort Brew, and as a precaution, I end up actually hitting Dampen here, I think, as well, which I think is completely overkill. I don't know why I did that, but on the next one, I am going to have my Trinket back, and as well, probably a big Celestial Brew, so I should be pretty immortal. I wouldn't really recommend ever needing to overlap Fort Brew and Dampen Harm, as they're two pretty powerful cooldowns, but I think I just blendered there. It wasn't really that big of a deal, and I don't think it really changes anything for the dynamic of the encounter for me. Brewmaster does have a very easy time on this tank buster from Kujo, and I don't really have to worry about pressing too much. As we get into the next Flame Vent, I am hitting that Trinket, my Ritualist Mud. I'm hitting a Purify, and immediately I'm hitting that Celestial Brew for the tank buster here. I do have Black Ox Brew available, and I do hit it for that refresh on Purify, as I can hit that to clear some of my stagger from the Venting Flame. One thing you'll notice here too, and what I do track in my Weak Aura kit that isn't tracked baseline, is our Elements debuff. In Master of Harmony, we do have a talent node which increases the damage of your next spell ability by 5%, stacking to 5 every time you use a physical ability. And the next damage of your next physical ability is stacking up to 5 by 5%, so a total of 25% for your next magic ability. When it is red, it does mean my next magical ability is going to be 25% increased, so I can use that on a Blackout Kick Breath of Fire, I can use that on Exploding Keg, or I can use that on Chi Burst. That'll increase the damage of that ability by up to 25% and is very good for increasing the damage of that next ability. I don't really care too much about the physical stack one, as you're not going to be using magical spells consecutively one after the other. But this is kind of a cool mini game. You do get to play as Master of Harmony, which does increase the damage you deal of some of your bigger abilities like Exploding Keg and Chi Burst. I think this is the only AoE I hide on in the encounter, as I don't think I have any button to deal with it, so I do end up hiding here. My Black Ox Brew was coming up in 5. I could have made it there if I was a little bit better about my spends, or I got a little bit luckier with Counter-Strike and Facepalm, but, you know, it is what it is. Now that we've done all the dogs, we've defeated Kujo, we're going up here. I'm going to fast forward a little bit in the video because we kind of want to get to the point where this is actually not an RP. I am finishing the event RP here. I'm getting through here, and in this next pull, in the next couple minutes, there's not really too much from a tank perspective. I'm actually just going to skip this part completely. In this route, we're not doing the EU skip routes where we skip the drill. This was a pug group, which I just grabbed a bunch of people off my friends list, and we found a healer in LFG, so don't want to do anything too complicated. But I am going to show you this next pull where I do an absolute ton of damage and how I set this up. I think in this next pull I ended up doing more DPS than our warrior, and I'm going to show you what you need. At this point, I do have weapons of order. I am going to Ox Statue taunt these in. Immediately Blackout Kick into Dragon's Breath, Weapons of Order, Keg Smash once, Rising Sun Kick, Keg Smash again, Blackout Kick, and I start building with that aspect of Harmony. And as you'll see here, I'm trying to build up my stacks on my next magic ability. Once this is stacked up, now that Weapons of Order is at 4, I hit a massive Chi Burst, and you're going to see my damage start to absolutely spike. I hit Exploding Keg, and I'm hitting those Blackout combos in a Tiger's Palm, and now I'm doing close to 4 million DPS. As I hit that Keg Smash, and again another Blackout Kick, I breach 4 million on 3 targets, 4.5, 4.6, and as well, I'm just absolutely cranking this back. I touch a death, and as you'll see here, I ended the 3 target back at over 4.5 million damage. This is pretty cool, because I don't think a lot of tanks have the ability to kind of have that kind of burst on 3 targets. And I'm going to show you too on the double spider tank pack at the end of the dungeon, how I did more DPS than our damage dealers as well. Brew's in a cool place where it used to before be known and have the identity of a high damage tank, but it doesn't really have that anymore. I think Brew still has the ability, especially in certain cases, to be very high damage, but most of the time you're pretty much middle of the pack. You can do a ton if you plan out accordingly, your weapons of order, your Chi Burst, and as well getting a good Exploding Keg. But I feel like right now, more importantly, a lot of the time too, on some of these really big gathers where I have to tag a bunch of mobs, I am using Exploding Keg mostly for threats. This is very different from Dragonflight, where, you know, I would basically save my Exploding Keg for an insane kind of weapons of order, spinning crane kick combo and like Brackenhide and do a million DPS, but not the same, a little bit different than it used to be. I did find out that, you know, that Shock Blast doesn't kill me, but just silences me, so that's also kind of cool to know too. Once I'm done with this drill, I'm going to be speeding up ahead here, and we're going to go over to the Machinist Garden. As we kind of get up here, I chose that we're going to be killing the Tinkerer before going into this boss. As this group hasn't played together before, I do find that often just killing the Tinkerer before going in is going to be a lot safer going into the Machinist Garden with all melee. The particular reason why is that on this boss, you can't always be kicking the Tinkerer, as the melee are going to have to be moving in and out of fighting the boss, and as well putting up damage on the plants that spawn throughout the encounter. I did make a mistake too, and I committed weapons of order on this pack, which I think was kind of a mistake. I think if I sent it on boss here, I probably could have done a lot more damage, but as I get into the Machinist's Garden, I'm not doing anything too special. My main job on this encounter is making sure that I'm enabling my team by dragging it over to the plant as quickly as possible. And the cool thing is, for every 3rd plant on this encounter, I do have Touch of Death. So I do often tell my team that they can swap off the plants, and I'll just finish it off with that Todd. This gives Brew a pretty cool niche on this encounter. I do think that it's kind of fun when you're on an encounter that has a high priority ad with little health, that you can just kind of go in, hit that touch of death, and go back to hitting the boss. Our druid did go down there just as he pressed a couple CDs, so that did kind of suck at the end of Bloodlust, but we do get him up, and we're back to hitting the boss. Again, I follow the pretty same order of operations here, just making sure single target, I'm hitting that Black Oak Kick into Fire Breath, and then Black Oak Kick Tiger's Palm. On an encounter like this, I actually don't even need the Black Oak Kick into Breath of Fire. I've had a lot of viewers ask me, hey Rye, I see you do Black Oak Kick into Fire Breath quite a bit. I don't see that a lot of Brewmasters do that. What's the main reason? Like, why do you keep it up, etc.? As part of Black Oak combo, when you do Black Oak Kick into Breath of Fire, you do gain 5% additional DR for the duration of that Fire Breath. In addition to that, this is refreshed with Charred Passions, meaning that every time you spinning Crane Kick or you Black Oak Kick, you are going to be refreshing that additional 5% DR Fire Breath. Ultimately, this actually maths out to a little bit less damage reduction overall than just putting it into Tiger's Palm, but you have to realize that there's an opportunity cost associated with Tiger's Palm, and you need to be pressing Fire Breath to keep up that DR anyway. Tiger's Palm is a very large energy spend, and you can't actually just spam it off CD on every Black Oak Kick, or you're going to be starved and run into the issue where you can't actually hit Keg Smash if you're running low haste, which almost every Brewmaster does. Haste is not very good on Brew at all, as you don't really need energy regen, you're never really energy starved, and picking extra up isn't really going to help you in any meaningful way. Again, keep it up for DR, there's absolutely no reason not to do it, and the difference between you hitting that one extra DR in Breath of Fire every 30 seconds or every 15 seconds if you're hitting new mobs, versus getting one Black Oak Kick Tiger Palm is it's pretty significantly different. Like, again, it costs no energy and there's no reason to even do it. In addition to that too, on a lot of encounters, you're just simply capping your brews, so that Tiger's Palm is not going to give you any CDR anyway. So again, just go ahead and slam a Black Oak Kick and a Fire Breath. You're definitely going to notice it over time. The 5% DR is pretty noticeable in a lot of trash packs, and it'll help stabilize you quite a bit. I'd also recommend too that if you're feeling like you really need more brew CDR, there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't do a Black Oak Kick and a Keg Smash. On encounters like this, where again there's no damage, you should be sending them all into Tiger's Palm, but if you feel like you're a little bit behind and you need to restore some brews immediately, go ahead and hit that Black Oak Kick into Keg Smash, and you're going to get those brews back very quickly. One thing I would avoid is Black Oak Kick Purify. Sometimes I make the mistake of hitting it as I'm trying to play the game pretty fast, but it's absolutely kind of useless for our class and is better off left alone. Definitely don't use this combo, and I wouldn't recommend getting into the habit of hitting Black Oak Kick into Purify and Brew. On this pull, I do have my Weapons of Order back, and I do have my Combat Pot, and I'm going to be hitting a pretty massive 2-target combo here. As I get my Weapons of Order stacked up, and I get 4 stacks of my mini game, I am going into that Chi Burst. I'm hitting Tiger's Palm, and now I'm keeping that Black Oak Kick off cooldown, constantly Black Oak Kicking into Tiger's Palm, and keeping that Aspect of Harmony dot available. As you can see, I'm doing close to 2.7, 2.8 million DPS on 2 targets, and I'm absolutely cranking Skull. Remember, I want to use that Celestial Brew off cooldown and then snap it for that Black Ox Brew once I'm out of charges when I'm just dealing with doing damage. I end up almost beating my Feral Druid here for a little bit and doing as much damage as a regular DPS in this encounter. As you can see, like, this is pretty insane. I don't think I can do this in my VDH, but at the end here, I do have Touch of Death available for the Spider Tank if I need to, but we end up killing it before I could even get the Tot off, so. Our timer's looking pretty good with 10 minutes left in the key, and I only have 2 pulls left before the boss. The next 2 pulls of the dungeon and the last boss aren't too dangerous from a tank perspective, and I don't have to worry too much about what I do with them. As I kind of go in here, I'm going to be grouping the Stinker and just making sure that anytime he gets stuck in a defender's shield, I'm getting him out with a Ring of Peace. You often see that in a lot of these pulls, I actually pull with Black Ox Statue. The reason why I particularly do this is the provoke movement speed benefit that I gain from it. Often getting mobs closer to me as quickly as possible is insane value not only for my time and my survivability, but as well my threats. Using a snap AoE taunt on the pull is amazing, and early in the season I wasn't using Black Ox Statue a lot, but I've kind of seen the error in my ways. I think that this is insane. I think that's, as I played around with it more, I noticed how awesome it is for pulling bees in Cinder Brew, for pulling mobs that are out of range, like the first boss in Cinder Brew as well. I often find myself in between intermissions, just going and putting that statue down and pulling mobs over to me. As I fight these short outs, I don't really have to do too much, but again, anytime one of these things happen, it's completely okay to hit Diffuse Magic if you feel like you're getting low, rotating Fort Brew, or Dampen Harm. As you can see, even on plus 19, I actually don't end up committing anything to these AoEs, and we're more than okay. As again, this last back here, I'm going to be asking my Rogue to Shroud. We're going to be hugging left and fighting the last 3 mobs in the dungeon. We are a little bit overcount now because of the drill incident, which did slow us down a little bit, but at this point, my time for tanking this dungeon is pretty much over, and we're on to the last boss. The last boss poses no serious threat for melee players, specifically tanks. All you really have to do is kind of stay spread out and make sure that you don't get hit by the orbs. I'm going to show you a pretty fun tactic that we've been employing when doing melee keys, even though that I haven't done too many as of recent. We were doing it early season. And it did help immensely in figuring out how to position properly for this boss with all melee players. Our Resto Shaman was a bug that we got out of LFG, so I don't think he understood what we were trying to accomplish, so he ended up staying in the back, but if you do this strategy correctly, it's going to be really safe for your melee, and I'll show you why. As we finish off these 2 defense spots, we are going to be going into the boss with about 7 minutes left, which leaves us plenty of time to execute this encounter. This encounter at this point is just a DPS check, and I'm going to be pulling back the aerial unit back to us. I do instruct all our DPS to be stacked up on me, and even though I asked our Shaman to, he decided he was going to stay spread out on his own. If you stack all together and just move together as a group, this first phase gets really easy and nobody ever has to move. However, our Shaman standing in the back here did kind of mess us up quite a bit, as now we do have stray orbs going across the room. Anytime this Pulse Blast targets a melee, you're instructed to stay still and then stack back up with the group. As you'll see, with all these orbs right here next to us, none of our melee actually have to move and lose valuable uptime on this encounter. Again, over and over, I'm just hitting my same single target rotation, keeping up Fire Breath, Blackout Kick, Rising Sun Kick, and as well, that Tiger's Palm combo. Orbs come in, we move, and we keep going clockwise around the room. Again, if our Resto Shaman, who's located up here on the map, had just joined us, this would also be easier for him, as he'd always just have to move left and never have to worry about cutting anybody off. But you'll see here what ends up happening is we end up losing a DPS because of our Resto Shaman's position. Everybody does expect that all these orbs are going to be in the exact same location every time, but this time we have a wild orb kind of charged across the map that does end up killing off my warrior. I do try to speed taunt the boss back here, but I missed my timing a little bit, and I want to get into a position where my DPS feels safe. I speed taunt again to get the boss back in position. I have my weapons order rolling, I hit my Chi Burst, and now I'm back to hitting that Blackout Kick and Tiger's Palm combo. I am hitting Celestial Brew again just for damage and spending that Vitality, and keeping that buff up whenever I can. Remember, if I'm ever out of Celestial Brews, I will just slam that Black Ox Brew and put it back up to get that debuff up on the enemy, especially if like I don't have to hold it for anything. I think on AoE, you should never really be holding your Celestial Brew if you're going to die. Make sure that you're not in like a bad habit of spending or saving Celestial Brew if you think you need it for something. I think like one of the things that I hate about modern tank design in Warcraft is that there are a lot of mechanics that incentivize you to hold on to tank defensives for damage. Although that sometimes that trade-off is cool, like having to save Metamorphosis to do more damage, I really don't like tank power being tied to, you know, having to deal more damage when it doesn't help you live. I think that saving Celestial Brew to do damage is kind of an awkward mechanic, especially too when sometimes you think you need to save it and you end up gimping your damage because you need to use the button that's intended for you to live on living, right? Like it's kind of a weird trade-off, and I'm not sure how I feel about it still. I do think that there are meaningful ways though of tanks being able to trade off, you know, damage and survivability, and I think like in single target Rising Sun Kick kind of fills that void too, right? It doesn't really give you much other than a stack of Elusive Brawler, but anyway. So you're going to see here that I instruct all of our DPS to line up in this line. Anytime the orbs are about to get baited in, we're going to be moving forward, and as soon as they come in, we're going to be baiting back. The goal is that an orb is never in the front line of the melee, and that all the melee are always safe here if they play in the front of the room. This does get messed up though, as you can see the shaman on the minimap is way in the back and again didn't really understand the instructions. So we get to the point here where his orbs are being baited way back in Africa, and now we're in a weird position where this isn't always safe. In a perfect world though, you can see that there's no orbs that ever touch this melee line. For the melee team, this is really easy because it means they're never going to lose uptime and have to move out backwards. You can see we get stacked in, we move in, and now they move and we move out. As this phase ends from the magnetic pulse, I am going to be letting my team get dragged back here, and I instruct us to be max range if we can. Move in, and then these orbs are going to come in and move out. Our rogue does make a mistake there and kind of bait inwards, that's okay, but now we're in a position where we have to be a little bit more cognizant of where this next orb is going. Again, our whole goal is if we just move in and out, we never have to worry about these orbs being in the melee line, and this boss can go down pretty easy. That's pretty much all there is for this encounter. I don't think that overall this is a very difficult tanking key, but there are a lot of tricks that you can do to kind of help enable your group, do big damage, and as well make sure that you have a good pace to being able to get through this kind of tighter timer. Playing melee comp is a ton of fun on Brew, and I think even in that first bowl, if you can figure out a way that you can assign all your kicks and or use appropriate stops, it's definitely possible that you just do it all in one. I think it's like way too time efficient to do it any other way. There are a lot of ways in this dungeon too you can make up time and save time. For instance, I could easily pull that Tinkerer pack right into the Machinist garden if I needed to. We could organize kicks and stops and, you know, kill the plant late. You can definitely speed up the dog pulls too. You did see in this video how I did mess up the drill skip with that Tiger's Lust, but you did also see how it was livable. I think there are a lot of places that I see Brewmasters fall over when things don't go to plan and they can't figure out how to live. I think the most important thing is just figuring out your own little mini game. Don't panic and slam every single defensive just because it's up. Use those Celestials brews and those Black Ox brews appropriately. Sit on them and think about your next order of operations or what mechanic you need to hit next. Alternate things like Dampen Harm, Diffuse Magic, and Fort Brew to deal with those more difficult tank busters, and as well, if you need to, make sure that you're creating distance between yourself and mobs. See a lot of Brewmasters just fall over simply because they refuse to use Ring of Peace or move away from mobs. If you need a kite or you need a global or two to get that energy for that next keg smash, make sure you use that ROP, that leg sweep, and start creating distance. Again, hopefully this video helped you in mastering the Mechagon workshop on your Brewmaster monk. Hopefully this as well kind of helped you illustrate and understand how you can do a little bit more damage on Brew and overcome some adversity when dealing with a little bit more of a difficult keystone. If you like this kind of content, think I missed anything, or more importantly, have any feedback, or something you really liked about Brew in this dungeon that maybe I missed, feel free to drop something in the comments. As well, I have my Discord linked as well, where I do have a Brew forum kind of popping off, where I've been sharing my week auras, and as well everything for free, so if you're interested in anything about my UI elements, it's all available in there. As well, lastly, if you want to come check me out on Twitch where I stream regularly, I do have a link in the description. Thanks again for the support, and if you want to see more Brewmaster content, let me know. Anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next one.